everyone. Have you ever found yourself fuming over someone's words, actions, or even silence? Maybe it was a rude comment, a betrayal, or just plain disrespect. We've all been there. But today I want to share something powerful. How to never get angry or bothered by anyone. Now, I'm not saying you become a robot with no emotions. What I am saying is you can become so emotionally strong, grounded, and self-aware that other people's behavior no longer controls your inner peace. Let's begin with a fundamental truth. Your emotions are your responsibility. No one can make you angry. They can provoke, challenge, or insult. But how you respond is up to you. That's your power. It starts with awareness. Notice your triggers. What kind of behavior irritates you? Why? Often it's because it touches an old wound, ego, or insecurity. When you know your triggers, you stop being a slave to them. Next, you need perspective. Everyone is fighting their own unseen battles. Hurt people hurt people. Their behavior is often a reflection of their struggles, not your worth. When you understand this, compassion replaces anger. This idea might feel uncomfortable at first. After all, we're taught early on that people make us angry or hurt our feelings. When someone insults you, lies to you, ignores you, or treats you unfairly, it's natural to feel hurt or enraged. But the moment you start saying, "They made me feel this way," you're giving away your power. You are surrendering control of your emotional state to someone else, often someone who doesn't deserve that control or isn't even aware they have it. In reality, no one can make you feel anything without your permission. Their actions may create an external stimulus, but your internal response is yours alone. You are the gatekeeper of your emotions. That doesn't mean you become immune to feelings or suppress them. It means you take ownership of how you choose to engage with them. The more you widen that space, the more freedom you gain from being controlled by others. Let's take an example. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your immediate reaction might be anger. Maybe you shout, gesture, or stew in frustration for miles. But what if you paused and realized this person doesn't even know you? Their action wasn't personal. They could be in a rush, having a bad day, or just careless. If you continue being angry, who suffers? Not them, you. You carry the stress, the tension, and the resentment. You allow their moment of recklessness to hijack your peace. Now imagine a different response. You notice the same situation, but you take a deep breath. You choose not to take it personally. You stay calm. You let it go. You move on with your day unaffected. That's not weakness. That's power. That's the result of accepting full responsibility for your emotional world. Taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. It means recognizing that you can't always control what people do, but you can absolutely control what you do next. And that shift in mindset changes everything. Instead of being reactive, you become intentional. Instead of being emotionally fragile, you become resilient. People may still try to provoke you, but they will no longer succeed in pulling you down, because your reactions are yours and yours alone. Most people go through life reacting without truly understanding why they feel the way they do. Someone says something and suddenly you're irritated. A certain tone, a particular look, a dismissive gesture, these things can set off a wave of emotion before you even realize what's happening. That reaction feels automatic, like it's happening to you. But it isn't random. It's the result of internal patterns, emotional buttons that, when pressed, activate deep, often unconscious feelings. These are your triggers. Triggers are not created in the moment. They are planted in you over time. They can stem from childhood, past relationships, traumatic experiences, insecurities, or long-held beliefs. For example, if you were frequently ignored as a child, you might be especially sensitive to being dismissed or overlooked in adulthood. If you were often criticized, even a well-meant suggestion might feel like a personal attack. The current situation may be small, but it touches a much older wound, and your emotional reaction is bigger than the moment warrants. That's why it's essential to develop self-awareness. You have to become a student of yourself. Pay attention to what sets you off. Ask yourself, why did that particular comment make me feel so upset? What part of me felt threatened or disrespected? What old story did that moment remind me of? When you begin to notice your emotional patterns, you can trace them back to their roots. And once you understand the root, you take away much of its power over you. Awareness is not about judging yourself. It's about being honest and curious. It's about catching the reaction before it becomes a spiral. You start to observe rather than automatically participate in your emotional storms. You shift from "this person made me angry" to "something in me got triggered. What is it trying to tell me?" This process requires slowing down. It requires mindfulness. It's a practice that deepens over time. But the rewards are immense. When you can identify your triggers, you can begin to rewire your responses. You stop being a puppet pulled by invisible strings and start becoming the author of your reactions. You may not be able to prevent people from being rude, critical, or thoughtless, but with self-awareness, you learn to prevent those moments from turning into emotional chaos. You become calm not because life is calm, but because you understand yourself well enough to remain steady through the noise. It's one of the most liberating truths you can internalize. The way people behave, what they say, how they react, those things reveal far more about who they are than about who you are. Yet, so often we absorb other people's words and actions as if they are a direct measurement of our own worth, character, or identity. We allow their bad moods, insults, silence, or criticism to define how we feel about ourselves. But the truth is, most of what people do or say is a reflection of their internal state, not a reflection of your value. When someone lashes out at you with anger or harsh words, it's easy to feel wounded or offended. But pause and consider, what kind of person needs to tear others down? What kind of inner environment must they be living in to react that way? Often they are stressed, insecure, unhappy, or struggling in ways you cannot see. Their anger or coldness may be their defense mechanism, their way of coping with life's pressures. In reality, their behavior says far more about what's going on inside of them than it does about you. You just happened to be there when their emotional volcano erupted. Taking things personally is like catching a dagger someone threw at the air and stabbing yourself with it. You make their pain your own, but you don't have to. You can observe their reaction without making it a statement about you. You can hear the insult and think this person is hurting instead of they must be right about me. You can witness their coldness and say they're dealing with something instead of I must have done something wrong. This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you or tolerate disrespect. It means you don't let their behavior disturb your sense of self. When you stop taking things personally, you free yourself from the emotional change that others unknowingly place on you. You stop internalizing their negativity. You become grounded in your own truth, rather than tossed around by someone else's storm. This mindset takes strength and maturity. It requires you to have enough self-knowledge and self-worth to stay rooted even when others try to pull you into their emotional chaos. But once you make that shift, once you truly understand that their behavior is about them, you step into a powerful kind of freedom. One of the most common sources of anger, anxiety, and emotional frustration comes from the deeply ingrained need for control. Control over situations, outcomes, and especially other people's opinions or behavior. We often don't realize how much energy we spend trying to make others see us a certain way, treat us a certain way, or react in ways that make us feel secure, appreciated, or validated. And when they don't, when someone disrespects us, disagrees with us, or ignores us, we feel upset, rejected, or even outraged. The need for approval is rooted in our desire to belong, to feel valued, and to be seen. This is a natural human need. But when that need becomes a dependency, when our mood rises or falls based on how someone treats us, we become emotionally vulnerable. We put our peace into the hands of others. If they compliment us, we feel good. If they criticize us, we collapse internally. If they agree with us, we feel confident. If they don't, we feel threatened or offended. It becomes a cycle of emotional instability, thus entirely driven by external forces we cannot control. The same applies to our desire to control people or outcomes. We want things to go our way. We want people to behave properly, to be fair, to be respectful, to listen, to respond, to agree. But people are unpredictable, and life rarely unfolds according to our expectations. When we cling too tightly to how things should be, we suffer. We get angry when someone doesn't act how we think they should. We get irritated when plans fall apart. But the truth is, the more we try to control, the more out of control we feel, because we are fighting reality instead of flowing with it. Detachment is not about indifference. It's not about giving up or not caring. Detachment means letting go of the need for things and people to be a certain way in order for you to feel okay. It means you no longer chase validation or fight to mold situations into your preference. You begin to understand that your peace is too valuable to be put at the mercy of unpredictable people or uncontrollable outcomes. This kind of emotional detachment is a sign of inner strength. It doesn't mean you don't engage with the world or care about others. It means you no longer allow your inner world to be shaken every time the outer world changes. When someone disagrees with you, you don't crumble. When someone disapproves, you don't panic. When a situation doesn't go your way, you adjust rather than explode. You stop trying to win arguments or prove your worth. You realize your energy is best spent maintaining your own peace, not trying to manipulate how others see you or how things unfold. In that state, life becomes lighter. You experience less stress, less anger, and more calm. You stop gripping so tightly and start moving with more freedom. And that freedom, that detachment from approval and control, is what allows you to remain centered no matter what or who you encounter. Peace is not something that simply arrives at your doorstep one day. It's not a switch you flip or a moment of clarity that lasts forever. Inner peace is something you build. It's the result of consistent habits, small, quiet practices that strengthen your mind, calm your nervous system, and bring you back to your center again and again. And the more consistently you engage in those practices, the less reactive and emotionally fragile you become. You begin to experience life from a grounded place, rather than constantly being thrown off balance by every external disturbance. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for cultivating inner peace. It's not just sitting in silence with your eyes closed. It's an act of training your attention, of observing your thoughts without becoming entangled in them. Over time, meditation teaches you how to create space between a trigger and your reaction. You become more aware of your internal state and less likely to be hijacked by it. Thoughts that used to rush through your mind like a storm begin to slow down. You start to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And in that awareness, there is calm, there is control, and there is clarity. Deep breathing is another powerful yet simple practice. The breath is a direct link between your mind and body. When you're anxious, angry, or overwhelmed, your breathing becomes shallow and fast. That signals the nervous system to stay in fight or flight mode. keeping your body in a state of stress. But when you take slow, deep breaths, especially with conscious intention, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, calming your body and, in turn, your mind. A few minutes of deep breathing can diffuse a wave of anger before it escalates. It can anchor you in the present moment when your emotions want to pull you away. Reflection is the third pillar. It involves taking time, daily if possible, to think about how you reacted to situations, what emotions came up and why. It's not about overanalyzing or judging yourself, but about learning. When you take time to reflect on your emotional patterns, you begin to understand them. You start to see where you lost your peace and what you could do differently next time. This process of inner dialogue, of honest self-examination, builds emotional intelligence. And with emotional intelligence comes emotional mastery. These practices are not glamorous. They don't bring instant gratification, but they are transformative over time. They create an inner environment that is resilient, calm, and difficult to disturb. They teach you to stay centered when someone offends you, to stay grounded when things fall apart, and to return to yourself no matter what the world throws your way. When you consistently invest in your inner world through meditation, deep breathing, and reflection, you build a foundation so strong that no one's words, actions, or opinions can easily shake you. You stop reacting out of habit and start responding with intention. You become the calm in the chaos. Not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger. Anger is a powerful emotion. It flares up quickly, burns hot, and demands attention. But what many people don't realize is that anger is rarely the core emotion. It's usually a surface reaction, a protective shield, covering up something deeper, something more vulnerable. Most of the time, anger is a disguise. Beneath it, you'll often find fear, insecurity, shame, rejection, disappointment, or a bruised ego. When we lash out in anger, we are often trying to defend something inside us that feels exposed or threatened. Think about a time you became angry with someone. Maybe they ignored your message, criticized your work, interrupted you, or didn't treat you the way you expected. On the surface, it feels like the obvious response is anger. How dare they? But if you pause and look closer, you might notice something else underneath. Maybe you felt disrespected, which triggered a belief that you're not valued. Maybe you felt rejected, which reminded you of a time you were overlooked or left out. Maybe you felt out of control and your ego rushed in to defend your image. The anger itself was real, but it was not the origin, it was the reaction. Ego and fear are two of the most common roots behind anger. The ego wants to feel important, acknowledged, and in control. When someone threatens that sense of self by insulting us, challenging our opinions, or dismissing us, the ego reacts defensively. It doesn't want to be wrong, it doesn't want to feel weak, so it gets loud, it blames, criticizes, or withdraws in cold silence. Fear, on the other hand, is quieter but just as influential. We fear abandonment, failure, inadequacy, and vulnerability. When these fears are triggered, anger often steps in as a shield because it feels safer to be mad than to be scared. That's why it's so important to pause and ask, what am I really feeling right now? Instead of reacting with immediate anger, we need to investigate the source. What belief got triggered? What past wound is echoing in this moment? What fear or insecurity is being touched? This kind of inner questioning shifts your attention from the external situation to your internal landscape where real transformation happens. Addressing the root requires honesty, it requires humility. You have to be willing to admit that your reaction might not be about the other person at all. It might be about what's still unhealed inside you. But the beauty is, once you start identifying the deeper cause, you can start healing it. And when you heal it, you no longer need to react with anger every time it gets touched. This doesn't mean you suppress anger, it means you understand it. You use it as a signal, not as a weapon. You let it teach you instead of control you. And over time, you'll find that the more you get in touch with what's beneath the surface, the less explosive or overwhelming your anger becomes. You'll be able to respond with clarity, compassion, and strength. Not because you're forcing yourself to be calm, but because you've dealt with what was truly causing the storm in the first place. When someone treats you poorly, says something offensive, or behaves in a way that pushes your buttons, the instinctive response is often irritation, frustration, or anger. It feels personal, deliberate, even unfair. You might think, why would they say that to me? What did I do to deserve that? But what if you paused just for a moment and consider that their behavior might have little or nothing to do with you at all? What if, instead of jumping straight into a defensive or angry reaction, you leaned into compassion, not as a weakness, but as a strength? Compassion is not about excusing bad behavior or allowing mistreatment. It's about understanding. It's about being able to take a step back and look at someone's actions through a wider lens. Often, when people lash out, act rudely, or behave insensitively, it's because they are dealing with their own internal struggles. They may be overwhelmed, insecure, hurting, or carrying unresolved trauma. Their behavior is often a reflection of their inner chaos, not a calculated attempt to hurt you. Think about it. When you've had a bad day, been overwhelmed with stress, or felt deeply insecure, have you ever snapped at someone who didn't deserve it? Said something harsh, withdrawn emotionally, or acted in a way that wasn't your best? Chances are you have. Not because you were trying to be cruel, but because pain, when left unmanaged, leaks out, and sometimes it leaks onto others. This same principle applies to the people around you. The harsh coworker, the rude stranger, the cold family member. They may all be projecting their own inner wounds outward. That doesn't justify their behavior, but it does explain it. When you start to understand that, you begin to disarm your irritation. You're less likely to take things personally. Instead of immediately reacting with anger, you might find yourself wondering, what must they be dealing with to act that way? This question doesn't make you passive, it makes you wise. It helps you shift from a reactive state to a reflective one. And that's where your power is. Compassion gives you space. It creates emotional distance between you and the negativity coming at you. It lets you observe someone's behavior without absorbing it. When you respond to aggression with calm understanding, you don't feed the fire. You reduce the intensity of the moment, both for yourself and for the other person. Sometimes this quiet compassion even changes the other person. They may soften, apologize, or simply walk away. But more importantly, you remain in control of your emotional state. Practicing compassion doesn't mean you're always calm or saintly. You're still human. And sometimes you'll feel annoyed or hurt. But with practice, you'll find that compassion becomes your instinct more and more often. You'll become less reactive, more centered, and emotionally untouchable. Not because the world stopped challenging you, but because you stopped taking its behavior as a personal attack and began to see it as a reflection of pain, confusion, or struggle. In heated moments, when someone disrespects you, disagrees with you, or challenges your sense of self, the natural tendency is to react instantly. You might feel a surge of emotion, anger, irritation, defensiveness. And before your mind has even caught up, your mouth is already moving, or your body language is showing hostility. This is the realm of reaction, automatic, emotionally driven, and often regrettable. But there's a more powerful alternative. Learning to respond instead of react. The difference between reacting and responding is like the difference between fire and light. A reaction is impulsive, it's raw emotion unleashed without thought. A response, on the other hand, is measured, it's intentional, it carries awareness, control, and strength. Reacting is what your emotions want you to do. Responding is what your higher self chooses to do. The key to responding is simple but challenging. Pause. That small pause, just a few seconds, can be the difference between conflict and peace, regret and clarity. It's the space where you give yourself time to feel the emotion without becoming controlled by it. In that pause, you can take a breath, ground yourself and ask, what is the best way to handle this? Or is this worth my energy? Or even more simply, will this matter in an hour, a day or a week? The pause allows your logical mind to catch up with your emotional mind. It gives your values, your maturity, and your long-term thinking a chance to enter the conversation. You may still feel angry or upset, but you no longer have to act from that place. You can choose words and actions that align with who you want to be, rather than letting the situation dictate your behavior. This practice applies in all kinds of situations. When someone insults you, instead of snapping back, you pause. When a coworker criticizes you unfairly, instead of getting defensive, you pause. When someone raises their voice, instead of matching their tone, you pause. Over time, that pause becomes your superpower. It creates emotional distance between you and the chaos, allowing you to maintain composure, dignity, and peace. Responding doesn't mean staying silent or avoiding confrontation. It means acting from strength rather than impulse. It means speaking with intention rather than out of anger. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Other times it's a calm and firm boundary. But the tone, timing, and content of your response all improve when you give yourself that moment to pause and reflect. This takes practice. At first, you may catch yourself only after you've reacted, but every time you reflect on a situation and recognize that you could have paused, you're training your awareness. Eventually, that awareness comes sooner. The gap between emotion and expression gets wider, and within that gap, you gain power over yourself. Mastering the pause is one of the most valuable emotional skills you can develop. It's not about repressing your feelings, it's about respecting them enough to handle them with care. It's about protecting your peace by giving yourself the time to respond with clarity, purpose, and inner strength, rather than getting pulled into every emotional storm that comes your way. Your attention is one of the most powerful tools you have. Wherever you direct it, energy flows. Whatever you dwell on expands. This means that the things you think about most, talk about most, and mentally revisit most are the very things that begin to take up space in your inner world and eventually shape your emotions, your moods, and even your sense of identity. If you constantly focus on what frustrates you, irritates you, or offends you, you will live in a state of tension. If your thoughts repeatedly circle around how someone wronged you, or how unfair something feels, those thoughts will grow roots and occupy your peace. This is not about denying reality or pretending that unpleasant things don't happen. They do. People will behave badly. You will encounter rudeness, unfairness, and situations that test your patience. But the question is, how long will you give those things power over your mental and emotional state? The more you mentally replay a negative experience or interaction, the more control you hand over to it. It becomes larger than it really is, simply because you continue to feed it with your attention. Imagine your mind as a garden. You can choose to water weeds, anger, resentment, gossip, judgment, or you can choose to water flowers, gratitude, perspective, calm, and clarity. The more you water the weeds, the more they take over. The more you water the flowers, the more beauty you grow in your life. It's that simple and that profound. When someone bothers you, you always have a choice. Focus on them and what they did, or focus on how you want to feel and what you want to experience. Shifting your focus doesn't mean pretending you're okay when you're not. It means deciding what is worth your emotional energy. Not everything that happens to you deserves a reaction. a discussion, or even a second thought, some things are better left alone, not because you're avoiding them, but because they are simply not worth carrying with you. You can train your focus like a muscle. When you catch yourself dwelling on a negative interaction, redirect your mind to something constructive. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Or what would be a more helpful thing to think about right now? You can even shift your physical attention. Take a walk, do something creative, help someone else, read something uplifting. These aren't distractions, they are powerful ways to recondition your mind to stop looping on the negative. The more disciplined you become with your focus, the more empowered you become emotionally. You begin to realize that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to replay every conversation in your head. You don't have to analyze every word someone said to you. You can simply let it go, not because you're weak, but because you value your peace more than your pride. Over time, you will notice that your inner world becomes quieter, lighter, and more spacious. The things that used to rile you up or steal your mood no longer have the same grip on you. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your focus, and in doing so, you changed your experience of life. True peace is not something you stumble into by chance. It doesn't appear only when life is quiet or when people around you are agreeable. Peace is something you must prioritize. It must be chosen consciously and cultivated daily. Most people treat peace as something conditional, something they can have only if everything goes right, if no one irritates them, if the world aligns with their preferences. But the truth is, peace isn't circumstantial. It's a discipline. It's a way of living. To make peace a daily priority means you wake up every day with the intention to protect your inner state, no matter what the world throws your way. It means you no longer leave your emotions to chance or allow other people to control how you feel. You set the tone of your day instead of letting your environment set it for you. That doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It means you'll face them differently. You'll approach them with clarity, not chaos, with presence, not panic. Making peace a lifestyle also involves making mindful choices about what you allow into your space. Your mental space, emotional space, physical space, and digital space. You become more selective about the conversations you engage in, the news you consume, the people you surround yourself with, and even the thoughts you entertain. You realize that not everything deserves your attention, not every fight is yours to fight, and not every problem requires your emotional investment. This approach to peace isn't passive, it's strong. It takes effort to remain calm when someone is pushing your buttons. It takes restraint to walk away from drama instead of getting entangled in it. It takes inner work to process your emotions in private instead of unleashing them recklessly in public. But this is the kind of strength that builds real peace. Peace that is not easily shaken, not easily lost, and certainly not dependent on the behavior of others. When peace becomes a lifestyle, it starts to shape your habits. You become more intentional with your words. You pause more before reacting. You seek understanding rather than control. You forgive faster, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve freedom. You spend more time in nature, engage in quieter activities, reflect more often, and simplify your life. Not to escape from the world, but to stay rooted in yourself. And gradually, people begin to notice something different about you. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it. You carry yourself with a calm confidence. You don't overreact. You don't get dragged into chaos. You seem steady in a world that's constantly spinning. That is the power of living with peace as a priority. You stop being a victim of your environment and become the master of your own energy. Making peace your lifestyle doesn't mean life becomes perfect, but it does mean you become equipped to navigate life with greater wisdom, strength, and grace. You no longer wait for peace to come. You bring it with you wherever you go.